So let's just take a moment and just show up in this room. Use your senses to anchor yourself into this moment. I'm going to open the chat if anybody has anything they'd like to discuss or have addressed. You can feel free to put it in the chat. But otherwise, let's just let our day drop off of us and just show up for this moment. Right in between passive and active. Right in between tense and rigid and loose and relaxed. Right in between the inhale and the exhale. With your attention at the forehead and crown, begin to focus on the breath. As you inhale, you're aware that you're inhaling. You're feeling everything expand. You're feeling the shift of oxygen as it leaves your lungs to enter your bloodstream. At the top of that inhale, there's that little shift of nothing space. Right before the exhale, that moment after the orchestra stopped playing, but right before the audience starts to applaud. That in-between space. That's the doorway to the meditative state, so just be aware of it. You don't need to manipulate it, but you do need to notice it. With maybe just a hint of curiosity. And then you ride the exhale all the way down. And there's another opening at the bottom of the breath. Breathe in that way for a little while. Notice the space in between the breath. It's a vacuum. A nothing space. And a part of you slips through every time you see it. That place is pure awareness. Now we're going to move. I want to clean us out a little bit. We're going to move up and down the mountain. So place your attention up at the top of your head and just breathe from that space. Just pretend there's just a big red ball, or whatever color you like. Just to kind of keep your attention up there. And just anchor yourself there with your breath. Power is more manageable up here. You haven't descended into the mess yet. But it lacks force because it's not dense enough. And so we bring it down into the body. So let's do that now. On your next exhale, bring your attention, or that ball, bring it down into your heart. And just watch from that space and breathe from that space. We're going to go back and forth many times through these centers. It's okay if it doesn't feel like much. If you keep your attention there, it's like watering a plant, it'll grow. If you can relax a little bit, it'll strengthen your heart center. Now on your next exhale, you're going to exhale down to the lower center. The center is just a little below the belly button and inward. But it's a broad area that encompasses your abdomen, your solar plexus, and your perineum. Breathe from that space. Watch from that space. when you do this cleanly, it's like resting in the earth. Subtle at first, but it grows with attention. It'll feel stronger on the second pass. For now, on your next inhale, pull your attention back up through the spine to the heart center. Register the difference. Now rise back to the upper center, top of the head. yourself to the upper center. Be there as cleanly as you can. Let go of the lower. Exhale down to the heart. Exhale down to the lower center. relax a little more fully. Yield to the lower center. Now I want you to notice any heat in the lower center. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to imagine it. You just have to find it. It's there. Even if it's weak. Give your attention to the heat in the lower center. And keep your attention there as you breathe so that it can build a little bit. We're just going to mobilize some things into steam so that we can move that up the body. Keep letting it build. Notice the desire for that heat to rise. It wants to move upward. On your next inhale, you're going to bring your attention back up to the heart, and you're going to let that heat follow your attention. You're going to let it rise. And breathe from that space as the heat continues to rise from the lower center to the middle center. And let it build there. Just like a cauldron of steam rising up the spine. Of its own accord, but with your invitation. Now on your next inhale or two, raise yourself from the heart all the way to the top of the head and let that heat follow and come out the crown of your head. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit tonight. We've talked before about how there's kind of two forces in the universe. One that is a projective, expansive force, and one that is a contracting force, a contracting, shaping force. And we've talked about power economy from many different angles. But I'm drawn to talk to you a little more about that tonight. When you do an exercise like the one we just did, your body comes out feeling completely different, does it not? You usually come out of it feeling clean, stable, awakened, sensitized, and buffered. And it's because to make the shifts that actually asks you to make, you have to really give your attention in a concentrated but flexible way, in a contracted but expansive way. It's the balance between those two states. That's where the power is. With the breath, when you're taking in, and exhaling out, it's that pivot point, that balance point where the power is. You know, when you slip into that, your exhale becomes something very powerful. And because that exhale is powerful, the inhale can take in that much more. But everything is like this. When you go through times at work where you are outputting, you have to find balance points. For some people who are not as skilled, that balance point will be after several days of outputting, you need a few days to just do nothing. When you're more skilled, that give and take is part of every moment. You're aware when you're outputting how much of you has gone into projective expansive mode. And you hold some in reserve, not to hold back what needs to be given, but so that you can ride on top of the wave instead of just crashing into it. There's this balance that needs to be maintained. One of my teachers used to talk about the importance of containing your energy. And it was mostly because she was sensitive like me. And when she would sit in a room full of students whose energy was flying all over the place, it would make her feel really physically uncomfortable. But it's also how you store power. You bring your energy into the boundaries of your aura and you notice when you start reaching outside of this moment for things, because every time you do that, you are projecting outward. Now that's not a problem, but it is a leak of energy from your energy field. Are you projecting outward for a good reason? Are you planning to try and manifest something? Or are you just projecting outward because you don't have control over your thoughts? One is a focused effort to build, and then you're aware of exactly kind of what your power economy is while you're doing that, so that you can pull back when you need to. You know, or when you're building, you're picking your battles very carefully so that the power is going exactly where it needs to go, and you're not just wasting. But for most people, that's happening, and it's literally just because they're griping about something stupid. That's not building, that's hemorrhaging power. So a spiritual warrior is always aware of where they're at on that spectrum between contraction and concentration and projection and building. Whether it's on a massive scale of a year-long project or the micro scale of a 1-minute breath, it's the same thing. Don't you notice that when you breathe consciously, you feel more stabilized and filled at the end? This is why. You're storing power. Now, if you become too tight, if you become too rigid, things can't flow. And so the power starts to get blocked off. We see both of these problems with people in society. We see people who are type A and really high strung. Those people are in too contract mode. They are, everything is their baby. Everything is in their womb, and they're just shaping this thing into existence. Sometimes they're just trying to shape your feelings into existence and your responses into existence. If anything starts to slip away, it's not okay. It's a problem. They have to go and grab it. If they want to throw a party, but it doesn't look exactly the way they wanted it to look, that's not okay. They have to worry it back into shape. All of that becomes a problem. And usually, if you go too far down that road, you find yourself on the opposite end. You find yourself in an expansive heap mess on the floor. Because it's not sustainable. And then there's no shape. And there's no containment of the power. No problem, Joanna. You have to find the balance point between the two. And it's not a static point. It has to be allowed to move. Which means you really do need to be aware all the time. Not tightly aware. There are ways to be aware that you've learned from this class where it doesn't take energy. It just becomes effortless. That's the meditative state. So let's just work with that for like 5 minutes, okay? I know this class took a while for us to get to the talking. But I want you to just deal with your breath, all right? You're going to focus on your breath, and I want you to just play with tight focus and loose focus, and I want you to kind of find the place in between the two of those where you can actually feel the most containment and flow of energy. Okay? Do that now. Attention at the forehead and crown. And just start where you normally start. And then I want you to first become really tight with your concentration. Super strict. Super restricted. Micromanage it. At first it'll feel like it's working because everything gets narrow, so there's more pressure. but it's not sustainable. Now just let the pressure off a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and just notice what the energy feels like in your body. Notice that point where it feels like you've just hit the sweet spot between expansiveness and tight concentration. And be there for a minute maybe. Not even 30 seconds. And then I want you to pass it. And just go deeper into expansiveness without the concentration. No form to contain the energy. Just notice what that does to your ability to store energy. The ability of the breath to actually make you feel filled and solid. Come back to that sweet spot slowly. Just titrate that concentration back in, but just enough to hit that spot in between where your energy is contained. In this spot, you can be calm and alert. Everything you do in a day is somewhere on the spectrum between these two forces of dispersion and concentration. You need to be aware of where you are. And when you become aware of it, you'll understand why you feel the way you feel. And you have everything you need to titrate that concentration to just the right point to do what you do with minimal energy loss. The ideal is that you stay contained in this exact moment, unless you need to plan something in some future moment. And if you have to, then you do it consciously And when you're done, you return to this moment completely. And you relax and abide in this moment. That way, you're contained and storing energy, but with maximal efficiency. Because you've made it your home. You're not fighting against yourself to do it. It's the difference of pushing forward with willpower versus just being willing. One expends energy, the other just relocates the home. And while they both accomplish the same thing, willpower is unsustainable. Willingness, you can do that indefinitely. I'd like you to play with this week. First, you have to notice where you are on that spectrum, and then you have to kind of move around on that spectrum a little bit to find the sweet spot. And then see if you can make that your home for the remainder of whatever activity you're doing. Make sense? Any questions before we head out? That class went fast. All right, everybody. I'll be here next Thursday. See you in a week. Hope you have a good time.
Thanks, Liam.
Thank you.